Hey, you guys, we're back live again. Today, we're going to talk about how to restore gut health. So, a lot of people have, in fact, like 1 in 7 Americans now have some form of gut problem. Everything from IBS to Crohn's to ulcerative colitis. So, this month, we're focusing on gut health. So, the theme for the whole month is for restoring, going from chronic conditions or chronic management to actually reversing your gut condition. Next week we'll talk about some lab tests that we can look at that are just phenomenal. Those are called food sensitivity tests. The third week we'll talk about ulcerative colitis and proctitis, which is kind of like as bad as it gets. That's like the worst it gets. And then the last week of this month, the fourth week, we're going to talk about case studies. So we're going to actually talk about the patients that have come in, what we did for them, and how they got amazing success just by changing lifestyle through functional medicine. So as you guys know, I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. I practice what I call functional lifestyle medicine. It's a mix of functional medicine, clinical nutrition, integrated medicine. I have 4 postdoctoral diplomates, board certifications, 2 in clinical nutrition, 1 in functional medicine, 1 in integrated medicine. It's a mix of functional medicine. There we go. We're live. Why we're going live? So, and then I also have completed all the lifestyle medicine coursework through Yale and Harvard's lifestyle medicine program. And I'm going to take one of the examples today, especially about Crohn's, and talk about the different cases that we went through regular Harvard continuing education on Crohn's versus the lifestyle medicine one that we went through Crohn's. And it is completely different. At the same university, completely different results and approaches. So, and we of course have Holly here, and Holly Hajjaj, she's the wellness director of the clinic, and then she also is a yoga instructor. And
Yeah, and I've had my own personal journey with gut health, so I'm hoping to have some things to share. Also hopefully a joke or two to entertain you. And I'm really almost always, except for when Dr. G makes a bad joke, I'm almost always happy to be here.
Yeah. So we're going to have some fun tonight, and I'm glad you guys are here. As you have questions, feel free to post them, and we'll try to answer the ones that we can as we go through here. And then, of course, just like always, if you have questions that we don't get to, I'll answer those after the live feed. And please share this with your friends and family. There's a lot of people suffering, and really, it's not all that hard. So the knowledge part's difficult, but the application part is very straightforward. So we'll get started here, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so we're going to talk about pooping and problems pooping.
Yes.
Last week we talked about the poop pills, right? So,
yes.
So a lot of poop discussions.
Right.
And if you're over 65, you'll be very excited about that.
Yes, or even if you're younger than 65, like me, I'm very excited about it too.
Do you have a poop diary?
There is a book called What's Your Poo Telling You? I would recommend it highly. Go to Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. So with inflammatory bowel disease, that's kind of the umbrella of this whole discussion. And it is what it is, right? Inflammatory, so lots of inflammation, bowel, and disease just means it's chronic. And most all things that we deal with when it comes to chronic conditions is that, we're chronically causing it. And once we stop chronically causing it, we see those problems go back. The body heals like it's supposed to. With irritable bowel disease by itself, that's like over 50% of GI referrals now to gastroenterologists. And what that means is that a lot of primary docs have no idea what to do with this. Unfortunately, a lot of gastroenterologists, I'm sorry for you guys, they don't really have answers for this. Typically it's, we can put you on medication, but only certain medications for a certain amount of times, because we're either going to shut down your immune system or we're going to knock down pain and inflammation through things like prednisone, which then will balloon you up and suppress your immune system. You could get cancer, but you're also taking medicine to shut down it even more on the other side. So it becomes a mess. So it's a whole cluster, if you will. And then the end result is you just get stuff chopped up. So you end up pooping in a bag, and then it makes hugging a little
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so there's no cure, theoretically. That's what they'll tell you. Same thing with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Like, there's no cure from the American Diabetes Association, but then they'll post studies where people cured it. So just like anything else, there is a cure, and the cure is usually stop causing it.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. We have lots and lots of success with this. I would say probably 97 to 99%, without sounding too cocky as far as... I'm very proud. It's very exciting. I almost want to get IBS just so I can cure myself.
Well, it's hopeful. It's hopeful.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're trying to convey.
Yeah, hope without hype. That's what we want. Hope without hype.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty good success rate. And one of the things that really changed how I view things is when I completed Harvard Medical School's postgraduate program in lifestyle medicine, one of the courses was called Crohn's disease, right? So, big one under the inflammatory bowel disease, where you actually have tissue damage. So on a colonoscopy, you can see this, where IBS, it's just symptoms. And I took the course through the lifestyle medicine one, but I also took the course through the regular program. And the regular program went like this. And I'm just going to let you know, it's pretty typical of most continuing education I've ever done. So patient presents with Crohn's. What medications are you going to give them? So you're going to start with this medication, this medication, this medication. All right. Patient's follow-up. Patient's not tolerating medicine very well. Okay, let's lower this med, let's raise this med, let's add this med. Follow-up, patient's not doing very well on the side effects. So let's then ditch this med, add this med. And that's all we did. That's all the continuing education was for an hour. All we were doing was manipulating medications based on the side effects and the tolerance. And then eventually the end result was refer out for surgery, and they chop them out. So then they poop in a bag. They get a colonoscopy, right? Colonoscopy. So what's interesting too is when I did surgery rounds, I did it at Halstead back in the day, and my mentor in there was the chief of surgery for the hospital, and oh my gosh, we had a patient that came in for I think it was Crohn's, and he was just like, well, there's not much we could do about this, but we can eventually just cut things out, and you'll poop in a bag, you'll be fine. And when she left, he was like, next time she comes in, we're just going to cut out that. We'll take her gallbladder and appendix as a favor. He said, otherwise, she's going to keep coming in and complain.
Wow.
And so that's crazy to me. And I was horrified, which is a good experience. It's always good to be in those rounds through school where there's horrible docs, let alone good docs, because you realize what you don't want to say,
But it's because they don't understand how to treat from the root, right? It's treating the symptoms, it's treating from the effects, but not going back to the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody does their thing, but, if you have a hammer, your job is to try to figure out how to use a hammer for everything. Never go to a surgeon and be surprised that the recommendation is like, oh, your gallbladder hurts? Yeah, let's chop that out. Your appendix hurts? Let's chop that out. Your leg hurts? We'll chop that off. Chop your arm off,
Yeah, it makes sense. It's what they do. It's what they're good at.
That's right. Well, and I got to say, all 3,500 hours of clerkships in all the different parts of medical school. And I went to chiropractic school first, and then medical school. But I practiced under my chiropractic license for functional medicine. But oh my gosh, all we did was just chronically manage people on the same drugs all the time. Add a new drug, all that kind of stuff. Until I got to surgery. In surgery, it was like, hey, we actually cured people. If something hurt, we chopped it off. He didn't hurt anymore. That was only curative, but it was a horrible cure for most conditions because they are preventable.
It was a cure, but like you said before, is there a better cure?
Yeah.
Right.
So, that was the medical version of the course I took at Harvard. The lifestyle medicine one was completely different. And this is how most all the courses I took through there was. Patient presents with Crohn's. What are they doing to cause it? All right, well, let's make these lifestyle changes. On follow-up, patients 30% better. Let's make these lifestyle changes. Patients 50% better. Let's make these last few changes. Patients 80% better. And then we make the final changes. Patients' conditions resolved. They're no longer have Crohn's. They're asymptomatic. And what's amazing about this is you think Harvard is the best school in the entire nation, entire world at this point. And it's the richest one too. And your doctor could go to Harvard. You could have 2 doctors go to Harvard and learn from 2 different programs within that Ivy League school. And your treatment options would be completely opposite depending on which course that doc took.
Wow. Yeah.
That's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. Right. The success that I have with patients, I always assume some gastroenterologist would like call up and be like, hey, how'd you do that? Like, I want to do that. But they don't. They just say, well, that's awesome. And then next patient.
Right.
So there's a phrase I heard a long time ago called, you're only chronically sick and dying prematurely based on what your current doctor doesn't know.
Yeah.
And that's literally it. Which course they took made the difference.
Which means you have to consider the fact that your doctor doesn't know everything, right? Because a lot of people go to the doctor thinking he or she, they know a lot more than I do, and they're going to lead me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so, and they blindly believe that. And I know it's a little bit difficult to do some extra research or to find another doctor or to look around, but it just might be worth it if you don't want the surgery.
It absolutely. So. And that's the thing, is it is worth the time, it is worth the effort, but it's kind of hard for some patients because they've been down so many roads where, oh, this is going to be the gimmick that works this time.
Yeah.
But it never is.
Yeah. And
they just waste their money and time. So there is that bit of frustration there too, I'm sure.
Real quick, I just want to jump in and say hello to Rachel and hello to Carla. They've joined us tonight, and I see that Carla has a question. I don't know if you want to address that now, or maybe we can address it later. Carla says that she suffered with C. diff. What is your advice for that?
Oh, don't suffer from it. Stop suffering. No, C. diff, Clostridium difficile, is a very scary word in the hospital because it's one of the few bacteria that can actually, kill you pretty fast. But the setup is the problem. So actually C. diff is a good bacteria. It actually makes B12, which runs, memory function, brain function, mood, sleep, and detoxification through the homocysteine pathway. So it's a very good bacteria. But again, it's good when its friends are around, right? I think we said this last week about some other bacteria, but it's your Zach Ganaficus and the hangover. When his buddies are around, they kind of can contain him. He's a good guy. But when they're gone, he goes crazy and causes all kinds of problems. And so what happens typically is someone goes into the hospital and they get antibiotics. And the antibiotics kill off all the good bacteria, and then, or most of it, and then those few left then have lots of place to occupy. And so as all the neighborhoods are cleared out, C. diff grows like crazy, and instead of making you healthy and happy, it starts making toxins, and then it actually can kill you. So there's a lot of essential oil treatments for that. There's oregano and those kind of things. But really, you want to restore gut bacteria. So once you're out of the hospital, it's lots of good bacteria, lots of fermented foods, and that's a very important part of gut health in general. Is you need 750 different species of bacteria that equal about 3 pounds of your body weight. So when you step on that scale, 3 pounds are the things those little critters that are keeping you alive, healthy, and happy. Pumping out B vitamins, digesting your food, preventing yeast infections, preventing bad bacterial overgrowth, and even protecting from small bowel bacterial overgrowth of good bacteria.
Yeah.
And so you want that balance.
If Carla was going to go to the store right before she went home tonight, what would you advise her to buy?
So there's a couple things. Like if you have C. diff, a good wide spectrum probiotic. So if it's something as serious as that, I would get Garden of Life, Women 50 and Wiser, they have like 33 strains of good bacteria in there. Very good product.
Okay.
Ultimate Flora, I think it has like maybe 15 strains. You might get like up to 20 something. Also really good. And then the other thing is to get like fermented, like Bubby's brand of pickles or sauerkraut. And those are actually 10 times more potent than the probiotics. And but they have fewer strains of bacteria. So you're getting 5 or 10 strains versus that 33 strains.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this talk we've discussed, we were going to focus a lot on IBS and Crohn's, but in general though, will this talk still be helpful to anyone with a digestive problem?
Oh, sure. And that's the thing is, I mean, it's part of what we'll talk about when we get in the detail part is the histamine productions. And the histamine productions, wherever they go to, like if it's H1, H2, H3, or H4 that's released, if it goes to your head, it causes migraines. If it goes to the heart, it causes irregular heartbeats. If it goes to the gut, it causes irregular bowels. If it goes to your kind of uterus and ovaries and affects that, you can get irregular periods. So basically it's this kind of, it could be asthma, allergies, eczema, psoriasis, all these things. They all cause from the same thing, which is the overproduction of histamines. And the overproduction of histamines comes from, if you trace it all the way back to the beginning, it's what's called T-cell dysregulation. And so really, it's kind of nice that you can almost approach 12 different conditions with one approach. Because again, it's not, you can, in my profession, there is a lot of people out there that will do like $15,000 a test on you.
Yeah.
But really, if you can just focus your kind of money and your time and effort on the reversal part or the restoration part or prevention part, it's so much cheaper and easier to do that.
And you're not going to hurt anything by just eating right and changing your lifestyle.
Exactly.
It's win-win.
So,
except for the time and effort it takes. That's the tough part.
Yeah. My job's easy. I did all, I got 12 years of college education, $200,000 of student loans. I figured out the process. So that's the easy part. The hard part is they actually have to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something I don't think Western medicine really helps you with at all. Like, you go home and they say, oh, eat different, eat fruits and vegetables. But what does that mean for your daily routine? What does that mean for your busyness and your time and your money? And so that's kind of what we're trying to help out with.
Yeah.
Through here.
Yeah, and there's no quick fixes. I mean, we tell people get rid of wheat and dairy from the beginning because those are the two most allergenic ones, the two biggest histamine producing ones through that T-cell dysregulation. And so, that's cheap and easy. Do that and see if it goes away. If it does, great. Cheap, right? But, it's hard because what we do in my practice is we really change lifestyles. And lifestyles are not easy to change. So you have people that are pre-contemplation, which are just kind of like, I don't like feeling like this. I would like to change. And then you have people that are like, I'm gonna do some research and figure this out. I'm gonna make a plan. But they're still not doing it. And then the people that we really like to get in are the people that are that actionable step, that are just like, if you just tell me what to do, I will do it because I'm so sick and tired of feeling like this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in constant pain all the time. And we have patients that go from pooping on the side of the highway because they can't go very far without, finding a restroom, to just absolutely normal. I feel normal. They don't have to take their medication to suppress the symptoms, and they just have a normal pooping schedule like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure that can just completely take over your life.
Yeah.
Like, in ways that so many of us couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, there's a 8-year-old girl that we treated from out of state that came in, and she said that, everywhere they go, they have to figure out where the restrooms are.
Yeah.
Like, even before they go, they're like researching out where the restrooms are. And then I think it was like just maybe a month or two, and they, I was like, how are things going? And they're like, we went to the park, didn't even think about where the restroom was. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
To finally just be freed of that.
Yeah.
And like IBS. IBS is so a lot of people have IBS. IBS is irritable bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome. And all that really means is this chronic inflammation, but they don't know why. And so it ends up being a diagnosis like NOS, which is not otherwise specified, which is typically, I don't know. I don't know. And they end up on things like antidepressants. The old medication that they used, the first 2 or 3, I think, series of it, the medication actually killed people to treat them for IBS. And then even when I was lecturing, I used to teach a 300-hour postdoctoral program out in Colorado. And every month we would talk about how to reverse a condition. And it came to gut, and I thought, when I was writing up the slides, writing up 700 slides for this lecture, and I thought, what happened to Zelnorm? They used to raise their shirt up and had little waves and stuff.
Yeah, I do remember that.
It was always on TV, and then just suddenly it was gone. And I was trying to prepare those slides, and I thought, well, I want to put something about Zelnorm and what it does, and mechanism of action and stuff. And so I was like, where the heck is Zelnorm? Well, it got banned because it killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So, at the best treatment that they had was, you might die. So you got a choice. Am I going to poop my pants and freak out all the time, be anxious about that? Or am I going to, die of the side effect?
Right.
It's not a very good choice. I'm not doing that right.
Yeah, it comes back. Did we lose you? Are we there? Are you there? By the way, keep your questions coming. I see a good one here we need to talk about in a second.
Go ahead.
Yes, Lyle says, is GERD reversible? GERD.
Yeah, GERD is one of the usually fastest things to reverse, or to actually just prevent. So it is a little bit different. And GERD, think of leaky bladder for some people. It's the same as
leaky
GERD.
Stomach.
Yeah, leaky stomach. Because now this is a little sidetrack, but but this is a good question. So you have your stomach like a big bag. On the top of it, you have the tube coming from your esophagus down, and that's where the food and water come in. When that hits the stomach, you have a tight sphincter there, a muscle that goes circular, and its whole job is to prevent acid from squirting up. At the bottom of the bag, you have another sphincter, and its whole job is to prevent acid from leaking down before it's ready. So those two things, when you have food come in, this one loosens, this one's tight, then this one closes off, and then it churns like a little washing machine for like 2 to 4 hours, breaking everything up, getting all the nutrients ready to be absorbed in the next 18 inches of the small intestine. And then when it's ready to release, what happens is this one gets really tight, this one loosens, and then the stomach squeezes and wrings all that stuff down. If acid squirts up here, it's not an acid problem. It's a sphincter problem. Why is this muscle not doing its job?
I had read somewhere that the pH of the acid in the stomach can determine on whether or not the sphincter's open and closed.
Yeah, so that's hypohydrochloridia, which is like naturopaths are all about that. They love that term.
Okay.
But in reality, outside of that, you should be able to maintain that yourself. And so I've never had to go that route yet.
Okay.
But that's really good. So what we typically say is then, okay, well, why is this sphincter then loosening up when it's supposed to be tight? And there's 2 nerves that go to that. You have one nerve that comes from your brain stem that goes down called your vagus nerve, and that really goes to all your internal organs from your heart, lungs, everything down, right? So that muscle is your parasympathetic, and that muscle says you need to be tight when you're told to be tight, loosen when you're supposed to loosen. Do your job. So that vagus nerve is just do your job. Breathe, heartbeat, process food, you're good. But you also have a nerve that comes from your mid-back, your spine. And that's your sympathetic nerve. And it goes to that muscle too, and it says, screw what that parasympathetic says. You can relax now. And if sympathetic nerve is overstimulated, then it will relax that sphincter and acid will shoot up and it'll burn the esophagus and it'll hurt. So that's GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, because we've got to call it a disease. But it's the same as reflux, right, or heartburn. So then the treatment for that is often very close to what we do with irritable bowel or Crohn's too, which is we got to find out what's causing this. And often it's the same like basic food sensitivity test, but the most common ones to overstimulate sympathetic nerve to cause reflux to happen is chocolate will do it, caffeine will do it, because caffeine's a stimulant. And actually there's more caffeine in chocolate than there is in soda.
I did not know that.
Who thinks about that?
But I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah, no more chocolate Cokes. And then MSG will do that, monosodium glutamate, which is in everything that's flavored, enhanced kind of crap, which not only kills brain cells, but it'll actually loosen your sphincter. And then wheat and dairy are like the absolute two first things to give up and just see if that fixes it. Outside of that, nitrates will do that, so processed meats, and essentially, and high glycemic foods, which are foods that convert to sugar really quick, so candy and sodas
Juice.
and juice. Yeah, even juice will do it for some people. So basically what you want to say is, okay, I'm causing this reflux. What can I eliminate? And see if it goes away.
Yeah.
And often it's that cheap and easy. If it's not that easy, well, then we just do a lab test, and then it says these foods cause these histamines that then release that sphincter, and then you have reflux. And the medication for reflux is absolutely horrific. That and statins, I think, are the worst medicines to take, because that proton pump inhibitor actually decreases your acid production by 99.9%, which there's a reason for acid in your stomach, right?
Right.
So same treatment that we would do for reflux is the same treatment same exact process that we do for irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, all those.
I would say, in general, acid isn't always the enemy. Like acid and acidic, like that word in general has gotten a bad rap.
So if you think about it the other way, where we say flip that over and make that the bladder. If the bladder leaks because that sphincter isn't doing its job, well, I guess we do treat it the same way. We say, oh, well, it's a water problem, so let's give you a medication that prevents you from making urine, which is ridiculous. So it's not the bladder is supposed to contain urine, and it's supposed to hold on and go pee when it's supposed to. The stomach's supposed to hold acid and then not squirt up when it's not supposed to, you know? So, and often it's like that easy to reverse or prevent. That's the beauty of it. I love gut problems. And reflux counts that too. So, and the other thing is we'll put some slides on here. Let me, I'll put these in the feed. Is it for this one?
Yeah,
No?
this one. Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
So these, I just, in the feed there, put a link to one of the presentations we do for irritable bowel. So it'll show some other things that in there, some slides and everything that we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
If you go on SlideShare, there's like 43 other presentations that I've done on there too. So all the slides are available to share and look at and print and download, anything you want to do.
It's really so amazing that Dr. Garrett is offering this information. I think it's so generous, because you can pay thousands and thousands of dollars to your Western medicine doctor and not get this kind of information. So this is something I think is really amazing. Anything that you would need is offered. So,
well, we're all in the same boat. There's too many people suffering to, restrict the information. It really is.
Yeah.
And it sucks because there's so much bad information out there too, and that's
you
not
need
fair
something
for
you
patients.
can trust, right? Because you hear both sides of the story everywhere. You hear contrary opinions.
Yeah.
So.
And usually with books and there'll be programs and supplements and stuff, and you read this kind of stuff, and it's always these gimmicky kind of things, and really the goal is to sell complexity, right? Because it can't be that easy to fix. And so the goal is typically let's make it overly complicated, and if it's overly complicated, people will buy something for that. But the reality is you're just causing it. And so the complexity is knowing what does all that stuff, but the simplicity is just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be on supplements for the next 50 years,
Right.
So.
Thank you for joining a lot more people. Lyle, Michelle, Christine, and I think Michelle, we were kind of answering your question there about getting diet suggestions. Look on the slideshare.net page, and then I think we're also going to talk about some of those suggestions too in relation to IBS and Crohn's and just good general bowel information.
So one of the things is this here. I'll show you an example, but this is an example of one of those food reports that people get. And next week, we'll talk about that, and I'll show you examples, and it's probably backwards on the screen, but I'll show you examples. But, if we go through this patient's lab report, so basically when you're talking about what should we eliminate, so, Michelle, that's a good question, because the cheap and easy thing is wheat and dairy. Get rid of wheat and dairy, see if it goes away.
Start there.
But outside of that, patients will be like, oh, I feel so much better. Now what do I do? I have no idea. It's your immune system and what your immune system is attacking that causes this histamine productions. And so it's easy just to do a lab test, and they literally put your white blood cells into this little dish, and then they put an antigen that's unique to every food, and they do that 167 different foods. No, that's not right. 184 different foods. And then they wait several days to see if does your immune system mistakenly attack that antigen. And if it does, it changes color when it makes that reaction. And based on that, you can see what foods are actually problematic for GERD, irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, proctitis, all those things. And so you just stop eating those foods, right? And it's easy. With the test, it used to be like a nightmare with food logs. Absolute nightmare. It'd take months of food logs and correlating symptoms, and I just hated that. And it was rough.
This is a blood test. It's not. Wasn't there a skin test as well? Does that relate to food at all, or is that airborne allergy?
So the skin test, they do those little pinpricks on your back, and they put just a little bit of the injection in there of those antigens, and they wait to see if your immune system attacks it. But a lot of those patients, I mean, you could take your pen down their arm and do that, and it'll welt up. They'll have a histamine reaction. But it's not because they're allergic to pens. They're allergic to, or they're just hypersensitive. So there's a lot of false positives that come with that, which then, again, you're wasting money figuring out stuff that it's not really true. So with the blood test, it is truly one antigen and your white blood cells.
Michelle's asking, how do you get this test?
Well, so we do this test. There's several other doctors that do this test.
And it's just a blood draw, correct?
Yeah, it's just one tube, very simple to draw. Sometimes it's a little finicky trying to get a place to draw it if you get the kit. Usually, if they do any kind of testing, they want you to do their testing. So we had this problem with a patient up in Kansas City where they were going to get their lab drawn up there instead of our office, and they were like, well, we do these tests. Why don't you do our test? But this test is 184 foods. Their test is like 60 foods. Well, that's ridiculous. Why would you do less?
Yeah.
And so he had to actually go to a place and have a nurse from an office draw it. So.
Is the test very expensive? Does insurance cover it? So do people know what they're in for with doing this? I mean, it sounds like it would be worth it.
Oh, yeah, it's life-changing. Yeah, and we've only had 2 people, I think, in all these years that it didn't make a difference. It was something else.
Wow.
And so you should never spend money on a test that doesn't change the treatment plan. And so even like sometimes we'll do, at least the way that we do it, people will do vitamin testing and stuff, and they'll be like, or even like the sales people will try to get me to sell vitamin testing. And it's like, well, I'm going to tell them to eat real food if something's wrong. I already told them to eat real food.
Yeah.
So they could be low in everything. I will never change my recommendations, even if they're 100% and they're solid on all the vitamins and minerals. Okay, we'll still eat this way. Eat real, actual food.
Yeah.
So unlike this person's tests, well, in the price wise, we'll go through several of these next week, and you can see how awesome these are as far as what they show and how unique they are, and why I can't guess without the lab test.
Yeah.
But
what a time saver.
Well, it is, because it used to be frustrating.
Oh, years and years. I think there are some people that go years without getting diagnosed.
Yeah.
Or never getting diagnosed, and what a time saver here. Yeah.
And these, used to when we do food logs, it would be like, well, okay, this food might cause the reaction, but 3 days later. So then it'd be like, well, I ate a banana and now I got a rash, or I ate a banana and I got eczema. Now I got Crohn's again, or a flare up. And so then it'd be like really hard because it's a delayed sensitivity. It's called IgG or IgG or immunoglobulin gamma instead of epsilon. And so it's a very delayed reaction. And so then it becomes very frustrating because you're dealing with stuff several days later.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you have one that raises histamines up, but it's not enough to cause a reaction, but if you eat another one that adds to that histamine, well, your mild reaction to both those now trigger a symptom.
Okay.
And so then it's frustrating. If patients have ever done that, if you guys have ever done that, it's just crazy trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And so like our office, we charge $300 most to do 184 tests and the lab draw and the rotation diet. And most places charge, $1,200. And even back when we used to do insurance, maybe 50% of the time, like Blue Cross would pay, but it was getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
And so typically we charged $600 back then because we had to have 3 people filing insurance and keep them trained just to occasionally get paid.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot easier just to charge a reasonable rate and, not make it cost prohibitive, which is $300 is a lot still, but this is a lot of tests. Right. And so like this person here, they have class 3, which is the highest, for like Brazil nuts, cashews, chia, flax. Like I would tell people to eat chia and flax. Hazelnuts, pistachios, safflower. So like all the fried food, she's going to have problems with that. Sesame, which is also tahini, which is in hummus. So I'd be like, oh, you got to eat a lot of hummus, but not for this person.
Yeah.
And you can see on here, you have gluten, wheat, and all dairy. And that's, I could guess that part. It's always that.
Yeah, the dairy looking at all the things that there's a reaction to are in red, and the dairy is just almost 100%. Yeah,
it's just a red streak all the way down. But this person, if they went and did gluten-free, so they ate amaranth bread, which is South American bread, their irritable bowel is going to get worse because of that. So they might have gone gluten-free, and it just had a whole blowout. It just felt horrible. Same thing with buckwheat for this person. And corn. Corn's already inflammatory, so you want to get rid of it. You do want to get rid of corn, especially genetically modified, but get rid of corn because corn is highly inflammatory. Almost all your meat's fed by corn. And corn feeds a process of omega-6s that lead to prostaglandins that cause more inflammation. And IBS, Crohn's, is already an inflammatory process. So you want to just knock that down from the start. And this one, even quinoa. So this person, oh my gosh, if they went to the health food store and they were like, just tell me what to eat, the best of these, they would have been worse. Absolutely worse. And we had this one time, and I'll tell this story again when we do. And
we'll be back.
We had a patient that had horrible ulcerative colitis. Just horrible. 2 enema medications, still had to go 20, 30 times a day, right? Just insane to live life like that. And so he was going away for a couple weeks, and he did his lab test, and it takes about 2 weeks to get this lab test back. And so he said, well, what do I do in between? And I said, well, no wheat, no dairy, no corn. So that's easy enough. And I said, the other thing is let's eat lots of anti-inflammatory stuff. So I said, eat lots of salmon, lots of quinoa, lots of flax, lots of chia, lots of omega-3s. And so those actually work, especially fish oils and fatty fish, actually knock down pain inflammation through the same thing as prednisone, through that 5-LOX pathway, but it doesn't cause the weight gain and the immunosuppression that the medication causes.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, just do this, you'll feel fabulous, and then we'll fine-tune it when you get back. And guess what?
He died.
No, he probably wanted to die. So he came back and he was like, this is the worst I've ever felt in my life.
Oh, when he went...
Yeah.
When he took your suggestions.
Right.
Okay.
So...
Well, that's better than death.
I thought, it usually works. And so I said, well, let's, have him keep a food log. So I said, let's look at what you ate the whole time, and we have your test back in. Everything I told him to eat that was crazy anti-inflammatory, super healthy, was on his list. He couldn't eat salmon, flax, chia, turmeric, ginger. All these things that I told him were just like, would just change his world.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
So what accounts for those differences? Is it his genetics, or is it where his body is at in that moment? Is that healable? You get me? You get
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Okay.
Because that's the crux of all this, is basically with any autoimmune or chronic inflammatory condition that has to deal with this, what happens is it's a process of what's called molecular mimicry. And the maybe simple answer is you have two immune cells that we'll talk about. One is T cells. And T cells, if you look at any autoimmune condition all the way to what's the actual cause, it'll be T cell dysregulation. So T cells are like neighborhood watch. So their whole job is to basically go through the blood and be like, you belong here, you don't belong here, you belong here, you don't belong here. So cancer doesn't belong here, viruses, parasites, fungus, but our cells belong here, food belongs here, pollen belongs here, right? You should not be allergic to oak trees and hay. That's molecular mimicry. That's a problem with your immune system. So neighborhood watch job is to only watch and report.
Okay.
And so it just goes around and checks IDs. And those IDs are antigens. And think of antigens are unique to everything. So like social security cards are unique to everybody. Mm-hmm. And then if T cell sees something like Klebsiella pneumonia or another bacteria or virus, and it goes, hey, you're not supposed to be here. I have hundreds of thousands of years of immunoevolution being passed down from mom to mom to mom to mom, or mom to child, mom to child, mom to child, that says what should be here and what should not be here. So the immune system has this huge library of database, of knowledge, of bad things and good things. And so it looks at that bacteria and says, you're a bad guy, I'm going to go tell. And it tells B cells. And B cells are cops. So they can actually do something when something's reported to them.
Uh-huh.
So they come off and they start shooting antibodies. And those antibodies, they're pumping out. Think about how fast this is. They are shooting out 3,000 antibodies per second for each B cell. And they're only specific to that one antigen. So it's kind of like you get a bad guy's ID card and you put it in your gun and it will only shoot that bad guy. That's how B cells work. So with the B cells, those antibodies then coat that bacteria, so it makes it useless. A macrophage, which just means big eater, because in Latin we look like foolish if they're big eater cell. It eats it, right? So you got to sound more professional, so you say macrophage. So the macrophage cells comes and eats that coated, what?
It sounds better than pig.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so it eats that, and then it digests that, and then some of the antibodies will then go and trigger mast cells, and mast cells release histamines. So if you get a cold, virus, bacteria, that's good. It dilates blood vessels, you feel a little warmer, more flush, and your immune cells can go out into the tissue and fight infection. So it's a wonderful thing when that happens. And then your T cell and your T cells and B cells create memory cells. So now they don't have to check IDs. The memory cells go, that's the guy. They're like a wanted poster. They know who this guy is next time. So that means basically you create natural immunity. Next time you see that same bacteria, boom, you fight it right away. You don't have to wait for it to amp up.
But why are the T cells prejudging? You get me? They're like prejudging these things that may not have 10 years ago been troublesome.
So that's
why are they overreacting?
So that's the part of the T cell dysregulation. Basically, if you suppress your immune system, then T cell is trying to do a job with limited information.
Oh.
So
it goes on red alert.
Well, it's kind of like me. I got glasses, and if I take my glasses off, I can't see very well at all, right? And so let's say I'm neighborhood watch, and I took my glasses off. So what suppresses the immune system or makes it difficult to identify things are things like sugar. So 1 teaspoon of sugar can suppress the immune system for 30 minutes.
Wow.
So during that 30 minutes, you have the potential to downregulate your immune system and cause T-cell dysregulation. A soda, which is 16 teaspoons, can suppress your immune system all day. All day.
Oh my gosh.
And guess how much the average teenager consumes in soda now?
I'm not.
By age 15.
I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. America! Does that help?
A lot. I'm going to say a lot.
Like 800 sodas a year now. 800.
Wow.
Because you got to be jacked up to play Xbox now. Right? This ain't no Nintendo 64 where you can get,
It's a whole nother level.
That's right. No sun-kissed on this. This is real.
Dang.
Xbox is real, so you got to get all jacked up on soda. So, basically by age 15, we should have no immune system really at all. And we have the highest childhood cancers.
But theirs is running good at that point, right? That's why they're not feeling it.
They're getting worse. I mean, you're having 20-year-olds with... 20-year-olds is males are what you see a lot of with this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And then... So the sugar will do it. Now, Americans used to consume no added sugar to their diet. By 1910, it was 10 pounds a year. In a whole year, 10 pounds. Guess what it is now?
I don't know, Dr. G. You tell me.
It's a lot. It's 160 pounds of added sugar to our diet a year in over 50 different names. What's really interesting about that is before 1950, we didn't have type 2 diabetes, really. And so it entered medical textbooks 1959. And that took 150 pounds of sugar to create that sugar storage disease. So, and what's crazy, even crazier, is now we consume more sugar by pound than people weighed on average in like 1930. So we're eating a whole person of sugar. Kind of like that commercial, you see that chocolate guy, and the women are breaking off pieces of him and eating
I know, but he's so cute and he's so delicious looking.
That Axe commercial, it was terrible.
He tastes so good.
So sugar will do it, and we consume a massive amount of sugar, so we should have lots of T-cell dysregulation, lots of autoimmune, lots of irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, reflux, GERD, all that stuff. The other thing is stress. We're the #1 country for anxiety, the #1 for depression, and anxiety, fear, and inadequacy raises blood sugar, so your liver will actually produce blood sugar to deal or cope with the idea that you're going to have to fight or run away at some point.
Yeah.
That raised blood sugar is just as suppressive as your immune system, and that's why people that are stressed end up getting cancer and autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, like caregivers dying before
That's
the
right.
people they're caring
That's right.
for. Right.
So there's eating sugar, there's stressing sugar, and then there's chemicals. So a lot of the chemicals that we use to suppress the immune system of plants and other animals, bugs, we share the same physiological processes that they do, those same pathways. So the chemicals that we use on those animals actually works on us too. And so, the average apple has over 200 pesticides sprayed on it during its life cycle. And that's crazy, absolutely crazy. I think strawberries were even more.
Yeah.
And so when we consume those chemicals, which we're the most chemicalized society, we're the most stressed society, we eat the most sugar society.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're crazily suppressing our immune system, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Right? So now you have Neighborhood Watch that's being suppressed, so their glasses are off, and they're looking at these things going, I think that looks like a bad guy. I'm not really sure. But the body does something to protect you, which is, when in doubt, attack. When in doubt, assume it's bad. And so then the immune system says that's a bad guy, even if it's not. And then you have memory cells that say every time we see that, we're going to attack. That process is called molecular mimicry. It's looking at two antigens that are fairly similar, but not the same. And then judging it as a bad guy.
Yeah.
So the typical process for this, and everything, all autoimmune, it starts as this, is you might have something like Klebsiella pneumonia, which has an antigen, and gliadin, which is a protein in bread that has an antigen. If those antigens are look close enough and your immune system is suppressed enough, it will look at gliadin and say, yeah, that's bacteria. It's trying to kill us. Now, after the walking pneumonia disappears, the Klebsiella pneumonia actually disappears, every time you eat bread, and it breaks down to gliadin, your T memory cells and B memory cells think somebody just coughed on you and now you got a bacterial infection again. And every time that happens, you're going to increase those antibodies, which then increase the mast cells being releasing, that will release histamines, and you get a flood of histamines. And since things like bread and dairy are 85% of the American diet, if those two are the issue, and you have that molecular mimicry, you have that mistake from the T cells, then every time you eat wheat and dairy, every single meal, your body thinks is being coughed on and produces histamines, and then wherever those histamines go, they target, then that becomes the condition. So whether it's eczema, psoriasis, reflux, whatever.
Okay.
Irritable bowel, Crohn's, right?
Oh, did you say fibromyalgia?
Oh, yeah.
We had a question earlier about the histamines in fibromyalgia. Can the release of histamines cause that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, typically with fibromyalgia, that started in 1984 with its sudden epidemic from aspartame. So now we have neotame, cephaltame, aspartame. Those fake sugars are converted from petroleum, from benzenes, into formaldehyde, and they convert back to formaldehyde at 87 degrees, which then causes these weird autoimmune muscle cramps and myositis. So that's the first thing, is get rid of any kind of chemicalized sugars, for sure. Any artificial sugars, formaldehyde, releasing things like propyl gallate or urea. But then also the foods are a big part of that. Usually wheat and dairy as the base, and then it could be the other things.
Do we have lists of these foods on the SlideShare?
Well, the SlideShare one should have the lab tests on there. There's another one on there called ulcerative colitis, and that should have that on there too.
Yeah.
So you can look at what those labs look like just from there.
Yeah.
But really, it's any food. It's any food. That's why I love this test.
Ones, but you would say, though, in general, on average, the big ones are wheat and dairy, sugar, as far as trigger foods go.
Well, the triggers are wheat and dairy. Yeah.
Definitely wheat and dairy.
Because, and outside of that is an absolute crazy guess. We have a book, I guess it's in the other room, that's a binder of all these lab tests throughout the last 13 years. And everybody's is different. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
But for those who have joined us who are struggling with IBS and Crohn's, and they are just embarking on this course here, what is your recommendation for tonight for what they could do to start preventing their symptoms?
Right. So one of the best things to do is to track. So we have a tracking form. You can make your own tracking form. And basically what it says is, here's what I'm eating on this day. Here's how I feel on this day. And it's almost like the old food logs. But what we want to see is, here's what I'm eating. Here's how I'm feeling. And as you get rid of wheat and dairy, do your symptoms improve? And if you notice that they improve, which I think everybody's it does, then you know you're on the right track. And then you can either do the lab tests, or you could then just do what's called provocative challenge, or you can do elimination diet. So some people might say, well, I'm just going to eat 10 different things and just try, kind of like I did with the ulcerative colitis, just eat a handful of things. And hopefully you pick the right ones. And then as your symptoms go away, then you're tracking. I'm eating these things. Okay, my symptoms are good. I haven't had any flare-ups. Now I'm going to start adding stuff back.
Yeah.
But again, it's only one food per week, because those IgG food sensitivities can take up to 5 days.
Yeah.
So.
And I would definitely recommend being patient. I keep saying this each time, but it's true. Be patient and just don't have don't have too high of expectations right up front. I'm just envisioning people watching who might be like, screw this is too much work. I want to eat what I like.
Right.
So make it reasonable. Just start somewhere.
Right. Yeah, always wheat and dairies. That's always the start.
And
eat real food, real actual food.
Yeah. Also with the wheat and the dairy, the wheat especially, that takes a little bit of figuring out what has wheat in it. What is gluten? Mm-hmm. Where is gluten?
Yeah, and it's not just wheat. I'm sorry. I say wheat, but it's gluten. So like rye, spelt, barley, all those are still gluten. Now, oddly enough, glutinous rice, which you'll sometimes see as sticky rice for like Asian dishes, That's not really the same gluten.
No, it's wheat gluten, right? That's yeah.
But if you ever see like vegetarian duck or vegetarian ham or vegetarian chicken, like I always see those on Facebook. This like container of it, but that's what that is. It's just solid gluten, textured and flavored to taste like meat.
Yeah, I almost killed myself on some meatballs one time.
Why?
Because they were full of gluten.
Oh, that caused all the problems, huh?
I felt horrible that day, and I thought I was doing something good, but I didn't know that that's what it was.
And it's in soy sauce and
basically salad dressings.
Now you can easily download a list of gluten-containing products.
Yeah.
And even Dillon's, if you have Dillon's, I think it's owned by Kroger's maybe, but they actually have a list for their store, which is MSG or. They'll have one for MSG, they'll have one for gluten, they'll have one for dairy.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of nice. It helps you navigate through things.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff will even say potential. Like even the people buying the stuff don't even know what the manufacturers are doing.
Yeah. Made in facility, right.
And you asked about the genetic predisposition.
Yeah.
That's always the default. Now only 1% of all things, all diseases, are really genetic. The rest of them are what's called epigenetic, which is as I screw up the body doing these things, I turn on and off genes that control things. And it sets me up for failure. But if you undo those things, then you turn those genes back the right direction and things work. So it's, say this right, and, so people won't be mad at, but it's not genetic. It's rarely genetic. There might be some genetic involvement.
Meaning it's not permanent. It's not a permanent problem you will have for the rest of your life. You still have the ability to change it.
Exactly. Okay. And one of the interesting things is almost all disease. There's a great book called The 100-Year Lie. And The 100-Year Lie was like, we don't have this disease, we made this change, and then we had a sudden epidemic, and then we maintained that epidemic. And with irritable bowel, Crohn's, Alzheimer's, it was 1950. I mean, that's crazy. We can track these epidemics down to a year. Like autoimmune fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, 1984. That was the year.
Wow.
1884, 1984, flatline.
Wow.
But we cause these. We absolutely cause these things. And, I use that example all the time, and I love this example. But, if you go to McDonald's and you get a strawberry shake in America, what makes it taste like a strawberry? Did I use this before?
I don't remember.
Oh,
I don't think so.
So it's all new. It's 40 different chemicals that make it taste like a strawberry. But if you go to any other country in the world and you go to the same McDonald's and you get a strawberry shake, guess what makes it taste like a strawberry?
Strawberries?
That's crazy,
Whoa.
isn't it? So if you know,
strawberries.
It's good. If you know these things, and you know how chemicalized and toxic a lot of the stuff that we're making stuff look like food, taste like food, smell like food, but it's not food.
Is it because it's cheaper to produce?
Well, you make 1,200 times more profit.
Wow. By
making stuff out of petroleum into things that look and taste like real stuff. And I got that video recorded where I'm reading from that textbook from 1910 about the adulteration of food. 1910 they were talking about this stuff. So I'll post that, but it's in the wrong format. I gotta convert the video format. It's all
technology. It's so complicated.
I can help with irritable bowel. The technology. That's a whole different thing.
I know we're getting close to being done, but I did have a question about. I started joking to myself a little bit, like when you start telling people what they can't eat and all the things that are in wheat and dairy and whatnot. So then I thought to myself, well, then you should just stop eating altogether. Right. And then it made me think about fasting. What do you recommend fasting as a way to relieve or alleviate symptoms for IBS, for digestive? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so that's a good question. There's studies that show that fasting, I think, for 3 days can actually reset your immune system, which is good, but it's still not going to undo the memory cell part. It's just going to help you fix things. But it's a very temporary, isolated fix. Okay. So it's kind of like every time I drink gasoline, I feel really sick. So I'm going to do this fast where I don't drink any gasoline for 3 days. Okay. And I felt fabulous. Oh my God, I felt so good. And then I went back to drinking gasoline again. Okay. And guess what happened?
Okay. So it does help you relieve things, but it's not a long-term solution.
Right. Yeah.
And then I have one other question for you.
Yeah.
Gas. Is it good or is it bad?
You know, it depends on if you're married or not. If you're married, it's all good, right? If you already signed the lease, you're good.
Or if you're a child.
Walk around farting, it's all good.
Yeah. If you're a kid, it's all good.
Yeah. But if you're dating, you're going to implode one day, right? So gas is the digestion of fiber by bacteria that releases methane. And so gas can be good, but typically chronic gas is not good.
Okay.
So sometimes they're like, oh, beans are the devil. But no, that's not true. Some people can eat beans and don't get gas. So it's not beans. It's that gut bacteria. It's that microbiome that's going on in your gut.
Okay.
So usually that means small bowel bacterial overgrowth or bad bacterial overgrowth.
Okay.
Which means more probiotics, more good bacteria, more fermented foods.
So that person who has it chronically and has for years and thought that was just funny.
Yeah.
I see that.
I don't know who we're talking about.
See that and no. Stop
No.
it.
Oh, this is a friend that I'm talking about. I have this friend with gas.
Whatever. It smells like flowers in here. That's all I gotta say. That person may actually have a digestive issue is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. And again, yeah, it's just a sign. That's all it is. It's a sign that there's something going on there. Everybody gets gas, and once in a while getting gas is not a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's that chronic gas that's the problem.
At some point, I'd like, maybe in one of our future talks, I'd like for you to talk about fiber too.
Yeah.
And the pros and cons and how it's a trigger and not a trigger, and because it's got two sides of the story too, right?
Well, almost always good. You know, as long as it's, I mean, you want lots of fiber.
But if you're sensitive, I'd heard that if you eat raw foods,
they're
raw
crazy.
veggies.
They're crazy. That's gimmick talk.
Really?
Yeah, it's all gimmick.
But what if you react to, what if you're not used to eating like a raw piece of broccoli and then you're in pain and you're bloating and
so a lot of times
they
don't have enough enzymes being produced because they eat too much processed food. And so your body's always conserving. And so it's like, I'm only going to make the right amount of enzymes for what this person actually does. And then like, I'm going to eat healthy. And so then they eat a bunch of raw stuff and they're like, we don't have enough enzymes for this. And then it's partially digested. It's irritating. There's too much rough. Yeah. So then it can be very problematic. And we had patients like that before.
Okay.
You know.
I'm one of those.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so histamine-wise, I'll try to post that chart for you to show you what I'm talking about with histamine. I have histamine in the middle and all these chronic conditions around the edge. The first thing is just the inflammatory part, like IBS. The next molecular mimicry becomes the autoimmune, where the tissue antigen looks like the food antigen. Every time you eat the food, your body then attacks the tissue. So like a lot of times something as simple as like rheumatoid arthritis, if they stop eating bread, that protein looks just like the collagen antigens that go around the knuckles.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of times that's a quick and easy fix for getting rid of rheumatoid. Otherwise, it can be other things. So we can trace, and this is the crazy thing, is the vast majority of stuff I do in practice isn't stuff that's necessarily common to practice. I mean, people are doing this stuff, but it's more based on research and physiology. This is how it works, well, then it should work, you know. Research is showing this, so let's do this. But to take research, cutting-edge research, and trickle it down to actual clinical practice, you don't see that very much. And so a lot of times when patients say, well, who else could I go to do this kind of stuff? There's only like a handful, and most of them are doing gimmicks. So that becomes a frustration. And that's also why, I mean, I have patients all over the world. All over the world.
He looks up the real research, folks. He really does.
And sometimes I just write my own. So just know, I mean, my takeaway from this, and I hope, now, a lot of the stuff we'll talk about, just here's the answer right here. This one is a little bit harder because you really need a test to figure this stuff out. Otherwise, there's that very basic things that you can do that we talked about. And start there and see if your symptoms go away. See if it's that easy. Otherwise, we typically just do the food sensitivity. And if there's any like little stuff to clean up, then we might look at phytic acids, saponins, these kind of like rabbit hole things that most people get caught up in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But really, as much as I wish people knew and saw what I do every day. I really do. Because it's so life-changing to just not have that disease. And people get their lives back, they get their money back, they get their time back. You know, they get to just be...
Quality of life.
Yeah, it's normal. And the first time I heard someone say, I feel normal. Like, well, what the hell does that mean?
For the longest time, you don't know what normal feels like. You don't even realize it till you feel better.
Yeah. And it's almost scarier. I think a lot of patients are actually scared when the symptoms go away. And they're just like, well, can I go to the wedding party? Can I go out camping? When is the other shoe going to drop? And when that doesn't drop, you know, I think it takes probably like 6 months before people are just like, oh, I think this is going to be real. I think I'm not going to be IBS anymore. Yeah. You know? And they'll know, too, if you cheat, you'll know. If you go back to the old stuff, you'll get it with a vengeance. So... I hope this information is life transforming for you guys, and at least the best thing that we could ever do is plant seeds of hope in a barren wasteland. And again, I don't mean to diss other doctors or any way of other people practicing. I just do what I do, and I like what I do, and I've
seen the results.
And I mean, why wouldn't you? I'm the 1990s Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
Not the current ones. Oh, I'm the last year's Royals. That's who I am.
Yeah. I don't know what any of this means because I don't keep up on sports. So.
No, you can tell I don't either. I'm still stuck in the 90s. Yeah. Okay. So what's your takeaway from all this?
I would just agree with you. I would just say
that's it. Just agree with me. I like that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Go on.
Whatever. I'm done. No, I was just going to say the same thing. Just take away the hope that you can make a difference. You can make a change. Don't let the despair get to you, even though there are times when it's really tough and really hard and you're so messed up in your gut and your head and your mind that you don't know up from down, right from wrong. But it doesn't mean that you should quit, because there's always something you can do. And I love the idea of this test. I want to do this test. So this, just for the sake of knowing. Yeah. Because I think it's interesting and.
You know what mine was? My highest ones were broccoli, cauliflower, coffee, which was astronomically high. I've never seen anybody that high. And that's why if I drink coffee, I'll go to sleep. And wheat, and those were I had 4 big ones, and that was 2 of them are really symptomatic. So like when I eat wheat, I'll be like, I just need to take a nap. My eyes will get blurry. I'll get brain foggy. You know, it's just a mess. Yeah. You know, I don't have it in the gut, but I have it up here when I do that stuff. So, for the most part, if you guys have any questions or, you know, feel free to type them in even after we finish.
Yeah, at any time, put questions in, because that'll help us prepare for the next talk. Yeah. And know what you guys are concerned about and what you really need to know about right now.
And next week we'll look at results of different lab tests. We'll talk a little bit about that. So that's kind of an interesting part because it's so unique to that person to what changed their... what kind of healed their gut. Yeah. And then if you need a second opinion, so a lot of times you go to the gastroenterologist and like, well, we'll put you on steroids and prednisone. I'm your second opinion guy. So if I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say. They'll always say it's never the food. It's never the food. They got all these experts. It's never the food. It's the food. It's almost always the food. So feel free to give me a call if you want. The number here at this clinic's 636-2888, and it's affiliated family counselors, which sounds a little weird for a functional medicine doc to be in, but
it's a holistic practice.
Yeah, I do a lot of anxiety. All this stuff is if someone has irritable bowel Crohn's, they got a lot of anxiety going on with that.
Right. It's mind body. It's all connected in the same skin bag.
And so remember, you're only chronically sick or dying prematurely based on what your current doctor doesn't know.
Yeah.
And usually that's about natural medicine. So next week we're going to talk about lab results, and then we have our proctitis, ulcerative colitis talk, and then we'll have the patient result one where we talk about case studies. I want you guys to know, like, each video we have like a little Easter egg, so from video to video you can see something slightly different. And so if you figured out and you're in town, or you want to, for people out of state, out of country, we just do it as health coaching for what we need. But if you figure it out for the whole series, for like last time we had 3, this time we'll have 4.
The prize is 1 million nuts.
Doll hairs. 1 million doll hairs.
Doll hairs, that's so random.
Dollars.
Oh, dollars.
Yeah.
Oh, I get
Dollars, doll hairs.
Ha ha ha. You feel free to ask Dr. G to stop making bad jokes at any time.
It's not gonna happen. Humor is the best medicine. They're just agging me on every time I hear them say that. So if you figure out all 4 and you're the first one, we'll give you a free office visit. So, gotta look closely and figure it out. They should be pretty obvious.
Right.
I know Jennifer Horn figured the last one out like that. It was too quick.
Yeah, but you got to figure out the other ones.
So
too.
we call these Easter eggs, and that's a video game term, but this is a video.
Or where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Right, that sort of thing.
Well,
Seek and find.
Yeah, seek and find.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you guys, and appreciate you guys sharing this. And you can follow me on my Facebook page, and if you have more questions, I post lots of stuff.
Yeah, keep posting your burning questions. If we didn't answer something for you, please throw it on there.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope this really helped you guys, and we're here to help. All right.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.